Right now, there is a prize of $1 million on the table for anyone who can read a single line of this writing. It was announced in January 2025. It has not been claimed, and the people who left this writing behind built the largest civilization of the ancient world. We know where they lived. We know what they ate. We know how they built their drains. We do not know what they called themselves. The story starts long before the cities. At Mehrgarh, at the foot of the Bolan Pass in what is now Pakistan, people were farming barley and herding cattle by about 7000 BCE. Around 3300 BCE, along the Ravi River, the first Indus signs appear. Marks on pottery. Nobody has read them since. Then, around 2600 BCE, something happened that archaeologists still argue about. It happened fast, and it happened everywhere at once. Cities appeared. Over 1,000 mature Harappan settlements have been recorded. 5 were large enough to be called great cities: Mohen, Dholavira, Harappa, Gunway, Dholavira, and Dhoravira. Measured by its outermost sites, the civilization enclosed around 1.3 million square kilometers, larger in area than Egypt or Mesopotamia. Jane McIntosh estimates it held between 1 and 5 million people. The cities were laid out on a grid, straight streets crossing at right angles, planned before a single house was built. The bricks were standardized, a ratio of 1 to 2 to 4, thickness to width to length, used at sites 600 kilometers apart. Almost every house had a bathing floor. Wastewater ran into covered drains that lined the main streets. This is among the earliest city sanitation anywhere on Earth. At Mohen Dholavira, there's a sunken tank 12 meters by 7, sealed with bitumen, fed by a well and emptied by a drain. We call it the Great Bath. We do not actually know what it was for. Beside it, Mortimer Wheeler identified a great granary. Later archaeologists found no grain, no storage jars, no seals from bundled goods. Jonathan Mark Canoyer renamed it the Great Hall, function unknown. At Dholavira, on a salt island in Gujarat, they cut 16 reservoirs into rock to catch 2 seasonal streams. A city that engineered its way out of a desert. Above one of its gates hung 10 large signs. It is the longest Indus inscription ever found at monumental scale, and it has never been read. They traded. Mesopotamian texts name a distant partner called Met-Elohah, and most scholars think Met-Elohah means the Indus. Indus seals and etched carnelian beads turn up in the royal cemetery at Ur. One Akkadian seal belongs to a man described as an interpreter of the Met-Elohah language. Somebody in Mesopotamia could speak it. Nobody wrote down how. They ran a standardized weight system, cubes of chert, rising in fixed multiples from under a gram, used across the whole civilization. Which brings us back to the writing. Iravatham Ahadvan's 1977 concordance catalogued 2,906 inscribed objects and 417 distinct signs. The average inscription is about 5 signs long. The longest text on a single object is 34. There is no bilingual, no Rosetta Stone, and no known descendant language. In 2004, Steve Farmer, Richard Sproat, and Michael Witzel argued it is not writing at all, but a system of non-linguistic symbols. In 2009, Rajesh Rao and colleagues published a statistical study in Science arguing the sign order behaves like a language. The rebuttal came fast. The question is still open today. No palaces have been found, no temples that everyone agrees are temples, no royal tombs, and no monumental war art. That is not proof of a peaceful society without rulers. Indus objects mostly come from houses, not from rich tombs, which is exactly where other civilizations left their weapons. The safer statement is this: if the Indus had kings and armies, they left them in a form we have not learned to recognize. Had the weather changed? Snail shells from a dried lake at Kotla Dahar record the summer monsoon failing for roughly 2 centuries, and Himalayan cave deposits record repeated droughts lasting decades. By 900 BCE, the urban phase was over. K.H. Lee Bungan was abated. Mohen and Dholavira emptied. The seals stop. The weight stopped. The writing stops. But the people did not vanish. Settlement numbers rise to the east, in wetter country. Even the diet stays the same. What collapsed was the system, not the population. Then it was lost for 3,000 years. In 1829, Charles Masson, a deserter from the East India Company army, walked past an enormous brick mound at Harappa and assumed it dated from the time of Alexander. After the annexation of the Punjab, the mound was quarried. Nearly 160 kilometers of railway ballast between Lahore and Multan was laid on Harappan brick. Alexander Cunningham returned to find the upper layers simply gone. A 4,000-year-old city had been carried away under a railway line. In 1921, Dwi Aram Sah Ni began excavating Harappa. In 1922, Rakoldos Ban Urgi began Mohi and Jodihro. The seals from the two sites matched. On the 24th of September 1924, John Marshall announced the discovery to the world in the Illustrated London News. A week later, the Assyriologist Archibald Sayce pointed out that the same seals were sitting in Bronze Age Mesopotamian levels. The civilization was dated by its own exports. In the 1940s, Mortimer Wheeler Reid scattered skeletons at Mohi and Jodihro as massacre victims and wrote that on circumstantial evidence, Indus stands accused. In 1964, George Dales took it apart. The skeletons came from different layers, the cut marks had healed, and there was no evidence of violent death. The invasion never happened. In 2017, the dating of river sands reversed the old story about the lost Gerhakra River. It had already moved away thousands of years before the cities. They settled that dry valley precisely because it no longer flooded. In 2019, a single genome from Rahki showed no steppe ancestry at all. The migrations everyone argues about arrived after the cities were already failing. In 2022, record rain in Sindh collapsed walls at Mohi and Jodihro. The site that survived 4,000 years is now losing to the weather again. $1 million. 417 signs. Not a single word. The largest civilization of the ancient world is still sitting there in plain sight, waiting for somebody to read it.